Hello and welcome back to the readings of The Projection of the Astral Body by Sylvan, Muldoon and Hereward Carrington. So we're continuing today, excuse me, sorry, on page 197, some positive and minor factors. We're finishing off with the last sentence. I shall later on give you the instructions for doing so in order that you too may be enabled to induce this necessary condition. So what it was talking about previously was being able or having the ability to slow your heart rate down independently over a period of time in order to reach a certain point when going into the dream state that enables you to be able to keep it at a low level. I've been trying this. I've heard or looked at things that are very similar to swimmers. So swimmers being able to teach their body sort of a mind over matter kind of situation where they're able to keep their breath for a long period of time in order to stay under the water. Now, what I have found for myself, which I'd like to share, is that when I've been trying to slow my heart rate down independently, initially I first got that state of panic, which then took me out of the dream state and woke me up out of the dream state itself. But over time, sorry, I have found and this is practicing. I've been practicing this to see whether I can get to a point where my heart rate is slowed down, but I'm aware that it's slowed down and abnormal to what it would normally be at a dream state, and being able to carry that through to the beginning of my dream state, or that sensation that I've talked about previously of no, I just know that I'm not in my body. That warm feeling, but like I'm in water, like I'm in warm water, and it's it's a very significant, and it's very, very prominent when I'm in that situation. I've been practicing this a long time. It's a massive learning curve when I come across various different new techniques that will enable me to be able to push that little bit further. Of course, there is that air of trepidation sometimes which takes over. I think I've been doing this, I wouldn't call it studies, but I would call it some element of I don't know, proving the theories to be correct. I've got so much respect for the persons from the old times that made this their life work, and I want to prove that their theories do work. So I'll keep you updated on the progress of that anyway. Okay, so page 197, some positive minor factors. But while realizing that the two major factors of astral projection are proper stress of suggestion and physical incapacity, you will, while concentrating upon these essentials, realize that there are numerous minor factors which contribute to the two major ones, and will learn to include every possible promotive element. I shall now enumerate some of these, and you will no doubt be able to think of others. The correct temperature for the experiment is extremely important. If the temperature in which you attempt development be too cool, you will harbour a mental disquietude. If it be too warm, you will likewise be uncomfortable, thereby preventing passivity and relaxation. Further, the warmth of the body will aid the heart in circulating the blood more freely, which tends to prevent incapacity. The ideal temperature is one of which the subject is cool but comfortable. Anything taken into the body which produces a stimulating effect, such as liquor or medicine or food, will exert a negative force, mostly because the stimulant works against incapacity. Although the emotions should be calm, the mind should not be, as is commonly supposed. One can retire when greatly troubled in mind, and that very condition of being may create the proper stress which stays at the surface or comes to the surface after sleep intervenes. Of course, with hypnosis, when the suggestion comes from the operator instead of from the subject himself, placidity of mind is essential. In the type of projection we are now studying, the mind of the subject himself acts in the same manner as the mind of the operator in hypnosis. In self-projection, the suggestion comes from the subject's own mind. In projection induced by hypnosis, the suggestion comes from the mind of the operator. If in fact the mind were calm, no suggestion would come forth during sleep. Consequently, no projection of the astral body would be brought about. The vital factor in projection is the stress of the mind. The conscious mind can be greatly troubled before the subject goes to sleep, and the stress which is there continues to stay at the surface of the subconscious. Recall the incident of the man who went to bed worrying, thinking that he had left his shop door unlocked. This stress remained on the surface even after he had gone to sleep, possessed his subconscious will, and he arose in his sleep and went to the shop to lock the door. If you have formed the opinion that the mind must be calm in order to produce projection of the astral body, you will be forced to revise this idea, for passivity of mind is a sure way to prevent projection. The sleeping quarters in which the subject sleeps should be far from disturbing noises. Noises have a tendency toward interiorization and physical alertness. There is nothing new in this assertion, for everyone knows that when a sleeper is to be awakened, noise is one of the surest ways of arousing him. However, if the phantom has been projected out of the physical body for some distance, outside cord activity range, noise is as apt not to awaken him in the astral body as it is to awaken him in the physical body. In attempting development, however, the subject is not apt to make the complete long-distance separation at first, and therefore sounds are undesirable. I have noticed that it is the unusual sound which usually awakens the phantom. The tick of a clock, the drafting of a stove or furnace, sounds which have become familiar and pass unnoticed, do not seem to affect the experiment. Naturally, a country environment is more suitable to the experiment than a city environment in so far as the sound element is concerned. Anything and everything which contributes to the comfort and relaxation of the body which can be instituted during the attempt at astral projection should be put into use. It is advisable to use a little bed covering as possible, for sometimes extra weight upon the body will induce peculiar psychological effects during sleep. The weight resting upon the body may cause the belief during sleep that the subject is under some massive structure, or that he is smothering, causing dreams to that effect and not infrequently arousing the emotions. But this is not all that heavy bed clothing is liable to do. Several times, when within cord activity range and conscious, I have noticed that there seemed to be some indescribable weight resting upon me, as if something actually pressed upon me. It was as if my breathing did not satisfy my desire for breath. Again, I have had dreams wherein I seemed to be standing up and trying to walk, while some massive weight rested upon my head. And I have awakened from these dreams and found myself projected within cord activity range, and still the weight seemed pressing me downward. Observation convinced me that this sensation of being under a great weight, while projected and within cord activity range, was caused by the weight of the clothes resting upon the physical body. Thus heavy bed covers are not only apt to induce a dream which will prevent the suggestion for projection, but will actually suggest the idea of going downward under weight to the projected phantom. There is yet another way of looking at this matter. Might not the heavy bed coverings give to the subconscious mind the idea of smothering, or cause a dream of smothering, which would set up the desire for air, causing the subconscious will to move the body out of the doors to appease the desire for air? Of course it could. And if the physical counterpart were incapacitated, the phantom would move out. Just another cause of so-called spontaneous projection, which always has some fundamental law behind it. It would not be advisable, however, for anyone to endeavour to produce a projection of this sort at will, by trying to smother himself into a desire for air, for in trying it he might take the air permanently. The clothing of the body can bring out results similar to these just mentioned. During the time of the experiment, it was advisable to wear nothing which could be dispensed with. Wearing nothing is better than wearing something. Tight-fitting clothing is most undesirable, for it is not only uncomfortable but shuts off the blood circulation. While it is desirable to slacken the circulation of the blood, it is unwise to prevent its circulation. The less restrictions of this sort the better. It is not that the astral body cannot pass through the clothing or bed covers, for it can easily pass through a brick wall or a steel vault, but clothing and other such restrictions produce a psychological effect which is not altogether desirable. With little or no clothing covering the body during the experiment, a psychological effect of freedom and lightness is produced, which is a powerful factor in strengthening the sensations peculiar to projection. One can quite understand how such sensations would counteract the sensations of projection, which are lightness and freedom. The sensation of being held down will hold the phantom down. Likewise, the sensation of lightness will affect the phantom in a similar way, even instigating dreams which have a pulling out effect upon the dream body. So much for the clothing element. So it is well to remember that weight upon the body from clothing or anything else is an unfavourable condition for astral projection. Projection of the astral body can take place while the subject is seated in a chair, but lying in the horizontal position is greatly to be preferred. Those hours of the night which one has allotted to sleep will probably be found the most satisfactory. There are many reasons why this would be so. When you retire at night, you put away the thoughts of worldly activities until the next day, whereas if you attempt projection during the day, you will say to yourself, I'll just lie down for a while and see what I can do, then get back to my work again, etc. There are many reasons for practicing the phase at night rather than during the daytime, that it would seem almost a waste of time to try and enumerate them all. This should be self-evident by now. At night there are not so many influences to distract your attention from what you are concentrating upon, and you will find that you can think of self, which is important, with much more ease at night than during the day. Although projection of the astral body can take place at any time, I have noticed that as a rule it occurs several hours after the subject has been sleeping, and usually after midnight. It is only natural this should be so, for during sleep the physical body becomes active. Further, the outside the world is more liable to be in the state of quietude after midnight. One of the most certain ways of ensuring the projection of the astral body, and especially a projection which is conscious from the outset, is for the subject to go to sleep several hours, and then begin to project in the astral body just as he is becoming conscious. That is, while he is in the hypnagogic state, emerging from sleep. This is the time when astral catalepsy is commonly met with. It is often several seconds before one can move physically when in this condition. First, because the physical body is very passive. Second, because the phantom is cataleptic. And third, because the motivity may be outside the body. This is a favourable time for conscious projection, which, of course, can be brought about by suggestion. Lying upon the right side or upon the back are the two positions best suited to astral projection, although it can take place regardless of the position of the body. Lying upon the back has always been produces the best results for me, and you will probably find that this position is especially favourable if you are trying to produce exteriorization in the hypnagogic state on entering sleep. Please excuse me. The sensations of floating and of rising upon the air are more easily produced by lying upon the back. One reason for this is that the blood is prevented from circulating freely along the spine, with its many nerves, thus deadening one's feeling of contact of the bed. The sensation, regardless of where it primarily originates, is decidedly what is wanted for producing astral body uprising, providing, of course, you enjoy the sensation, which I might add I do not. I find it incredibly uncomfortable, and I think that's why I've had, in my experience, so many failed attempts when it comes to the projection, because I'm yet, it's not that I do not, it's I'm yet to feel comfortable with that sensation, because it is very different to what you experience in normal everyday dream state or life itself. So that's my Achilles heel, as it were. You'll notice too that while lying upon the back, it is easier to note the sensation which is produced when the astral body moves into the zone of quietude. Many people cannot go to sleep while lying upon their backs for this very reason, because they have the sensation of floating just as though they are about to lose consciousness and have slight repercussions. Many people, when undergoing this, will move a more or less distinct word or syllable concurrently with this repercussion, so you shoot forward and will have a breathtaking feeling in the pit of the stomach. Terrifying the experience may seem to the subject at the time, it is usually amusing to him afterward when he thinks it over. Others become so terrified that they will jump out of bed before they can stop themselves. There is on record the case of a woman who experienced the astral body's movement as she was rising to sleep, and repercussed with a shriek. She jumped out of bed and ran outside before the terror left her. Coincidentally, with the repercussion, she would always shriek. She stated that as she was going to sleep, something would get under her and push her up in the air, and then let her drop. She thought that it was her physical body, and noticed that this took place only when she lay on her back. What actually happened was this. The lady experienced the movement of the astral body as she was about to go to sleep. This frightened her, and she repercussed with a shriek. She ran outside, and she said to get air. The astral body seems to rise more quickly when the subject is lying upon his back, and it also seems that one has a tendency to cry out more frequently during a repercussion. Hey, wow, ouch, and oh are utterances likely to be shrieked out at such a time. Another common sound is as if one has been struck a vigorous blow on the abdomen, so vigorous that it's forced through the air and through the vocal cords, causing a loud grunt. If you are one of those who just cannot sleep upon your back because of unpleasant sensations such as those mentioned, there is a good chance that you will experience conscious projections, but you might suggest to yourself that you like the sensation and practice projection as you are entering sleep. For example, by means of the elevator dream. It is not as easy to achieve success if you lie upon the left side or upon the stomach. Okay. Repercussion noises. So we're following at this moment on page 102. Repercussion noises. Slight repercussions accompanying natural sleep, or even the more severe repercussions, like those experienced in falling dreams, will often be accompanied by a peculiar noise which seems close to the ear or inside the head. A very common one is pop, as if a toy balloon burst close to the ear. Another is a loud sizz, and sometimes a sound inside the brain causing that organ to vibrate. Another is a crackling sound, not unlike the noise made by an electric spark when the positive and negative posts of a battery are touched together. This sound often heard just to take off a projection as well at the moment of recoincidence, and seems to be in the head, near the back or part of the skull. Still another commonly heard sound at the time of recoincidence is a zing, as if a string were tightly drawn around the head and then struck, as one might strike the strings of a guitar. At other times, the subject may hear a distinct word uttered. It seems very close to the ear, and even at times as though the word was spoken right inside the head. The striking thing about these sounds is the way in which they can be felt. Yes, actually felt, moving about inside one's head, and one's brain seems to shake like the diaphragm of a drum, which vibrates when it's struck and resounds. On one occasion I was projected and was standing about 10 feet from my physical body. A dog began to bark in the street, and I heard the dog barking with my physical ears, but I could feel it in my astral head. This was very difficult to explain, but it is precisely what occurred. It was as if one of my ears had been projected, and I could feel the sound of the barking inside my astral head. You may have heard of persons who could smell odour, sounds too, and can evoke colours. Carrington has touched upon this subject in his book Higher Physical Development. It is interesting to know too that at times during astral projections the subject may see out of different parts of his or her body. For example, he may lie upon his back in the air and see what is taking place below him, while looking in the opposite direction with his eyes. Usually, force of habit compels the projector to use his eyes, but this is not necessary in all cases. I have never known this to be true. However, outside cord activity range, although it may be, there are persons who can do this in the physical body. I personally know a man who seems to have the ability to see out of his forehead. A.J. Davis, in commenting upon his first experiences along this line, says, "Having tightly secured my bodily eyes with handkerchiefs, he, the operator, then placed the book on a horizontal line with my forehead, and I saw and read the title without the slightest hesitation. This test and many experiments of the kind were tried and repeated, and the demonstration of vision, independent of the physical organs of sense, was clear and unquestionable." Lombroso and others have recorded many cases in which persons have been able to see by the way of solar plexus, completely independent of the physical eyes, and there are times when the projected phantom can also see things which are many miles away, but as a rule the phantom will instantly move to that spot. 203. There's a subtext here at the bottom. One is here reminded, of course, of the head snapping so frequently noted in the case of Mrs. Piper, just as she emerges from trance. This has been discussed at considerable length by various research in the proceedings and journals of the SPR and elsewhere. Hereward Carrington. Okay, so that's it for today. We're ending on page 203, and we'll be beginning on light, a negative factor, on page 204. Thank you so much for sticking with me. I appreciate you, and I appreciating you giving up your a small amount of time to listen to my readings, and I will hopefully see you on the next one. Thank you. Much love. Bye bye.